I didn't plan to stop. I was just passing by the narrow lane behind the row of old shops when I saw her, struggling with two paper bags that looked seconds away from giving up. It was the kind of small-town street where everything feels slower, except embarrassment. And before I could think about it, I'd already said, "Here, let me." She looked up, eyes steady, the kind of gaze that could make you forget what you were offering to do. "Are you sure?" she asked. Her voice wasn't soft, exactly, more like someone who'd learned to balance warmth with distance. She was in her mid-40s, maybe older, hair pulled into a loose knot that didn't quite hold. There was something dignified about her even in that moment, sleeves rolled, keys dangling from her mouth as she tried to unlock the bookstore's back door. I nodded, taking the bags before she could argue. "I'm sure." The scent of paper and coffee drifted out when she finally pushed the door open. Inside, the store was quiet, all wood and dust, the air thick with stories that had been read too many times. "You're new around here," she said, more statement than question. "Yeah, moved last month. I walk by here most days." She smiled, faintly. "I thought so. You always look like you're thinking about something." I didn't know what to say to that, so I set the bags on the counter instead. She began unpacking them. Bread, milk, a small jar of honey. Ordinary things that somehow made the room feel more alive. "I manage this place," she said, gesturing at the rows of books. "It's quieter than it looks." "I like quiet," I said. "Most people your age don't." I almost laughed, but she wasn't teasing. There was something behind her words, a kind of curiosity she didn't want to admit to. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It just felt aware. The clock above the counter ticked louder than it should have. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and I caught myself staring. "Thank you," she said, finally. "You didn't have to help." "It's fine. I wasn't doing anything." That made her smile again, not polite this time, but real. "You look like someone who's always doing something, even when he says he's not." There it was, the kind of sentence that lands deeper than it should. She turned to stack books on a nearby shelf, the sleeves of her cardigan slipping down her arm as she reached up. For some reason, I noticed everything. The way she hummed under her breath, how she paused between titles as if remembering something. After a moment, she glanced over her shoulder. "Do you read?" "Sometimes. Sometimes isn't enough." Her tone was gentle, but it lingered. I didn't know why, but I wanted to stay. She motioned to the front of the store, where the sunlight fell through the blinds in thin golden lines. "Next time you walk by," she said, "come in. I could use the help." And then, just as I turned to leave, she added, "What are you running from, anyway?" I froze. It wasn't asked like a joke, or like she expected an answer, but she had looked right at me when she said it, like she already knew I wouldn't know how to respond. I laughed it off, muttered something about errands, and stepped out into the fading light. But the rest of the day, I kept hearing her question, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I realized, for the first time, I might want to find one. And somehow, I knew it would start with her. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned either. I'd stopped by the bookstore like she'd said, expecting a quick hello, maybe an errand to help with. But she was alone behind the counter, glasses low on her nose, sorting through a box of old returns that looked heavier than her patience. "Still need help?" I asked. She looked up, her expression somewhere between surprise and relief, though she hid the second one quickly. "You really came back," she said. "Wasn't sure if I'd be allowed in," I said, smiling. "That depends," she replied, stacking another book. "Do you actually read, or just like carrying groceries?" "Depends on the book," I said. That earned a quiet laugh, one of those short ones that end with a sigh instead of a smile. It was the first time I'd heard her laugh, and it sounded like something that hadn't been used in a while. I helped her lift the box onto the floor, the air thick with the faint scent of paper and her perfume, subtle, like something worn out of habit rather than vanity. When she leaned over to tape the box shut, her sleeve slipped again, revealing a small scar on her forearm. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. She noticed. Her voice softened, almost like she was talking to herself. "You shouldn't come here during the day. I get too much done when it's quiet." "I don't mind quiet," I said. "That's not what I meant." She hesitated, her fingers pausing mid-tape. Then, more quietly, people start thinking things. Do you? That made her still completely. She looked at me, not with shock, but with the kind of tired understanding that said she'd already asked herself the same thing. Sometimes, she admitted, just barely above a whisper. Neither of us moved for a while. The street outside was faintly alive. Footsteps, a bus passing. But inside the store, it was just the two of us and the hum of the old refrigerator in the back. She sat down then, motioning for me to hand her another stack of books. I did. She brushed my hand when taking them. Not deliberately, but it stayed with me longer than it should have. Why do you help me? She asked. I don't know. I said truthfully. Maybe I like watching how you work. She gave a small, weary smile. You say that like I'm doing something interesting. You are, I said. You make silence look comfortable. She looked at me for a long time then, not flattered, not smiling, just looking. Something in her face flickered, the way light shifts through blinds. I used to like quiet, she said finally. Now it feels like punishment. She said it so simply, I almost missed the sadness in it. I didn't know how to respond, so I just stayed beside her, helping her stack the rest of the books. Neither of us said much after that. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't empty either. When I left that evening, she didn't say goodbye, just looked up briefly from the counter, her lips parting like she was about to say something, then stopping herself. I kept waiting for her to call after me. She didn't. But as I pushed the door open, I heard her voice, quiet and careful. You shouldn't make habits out of me. The bell over the door chimed, and that was the last sound before the silence followed me home. It was raining the night I stayed late to help her close up. The storm had rolled in fast, blurring the streetlights and tapping against the shop's wide front windows like a reminder that the world outside still existed. Inside, the air was dim, heavy with the smell of wet pavement and old paper. She was behind the counter again, closing out receipts by hand, a pencil tucked behind her ear. The small lamp beside her threw a circle of amber light that made her look softer somehow, less guarded, more human. You don't have to stay, she said without looking up. I know, I said, but I don't really want to walk home in that. She smirked faintly. You'd rather risk my company? I pretended to think about it. It's a close call. That earned me a small, tired laugh. The kind that starts as defense and ends as surrender. For a while, we just listened to the rain. She finished the paperwork and began turning over the open sign on the door, the keychain jingling softly. I watched her move, deliberate, careful, like someone who needed order to stay steady. When the lights flickered from the storm, she paused, hand braced on the counter. I caught the smallest tremor in her fingers. You okay? I asked. Fine, she said too quickly. But when the lights flickered again and the thunder rolled close, she exhaled sharply, that kind of breath you don't mean to let out in front of someone. I handed her my phone flashlight without thinking. She took it, our hands brushing, and for a second the air felt charged. Thank you, she murmured. Her voice was low, uneven. You always look at me like you're trying to understand something. Maybe I am, I said. Her eyes met mine then, steady, searching. And what do you think you figured out? Nothing, I said. That's what keeps me coming back. Something changed in her expression. Not quite a smile, not quite sadness. The storm outside cracked loud enough to make the lights blink again, and she reached out instinctively, fingers catching my arm. Just a moment. Just contact. Then she let go. She turned away fast, busying herself with a stack of receipts that didn't need organizing. You should, probably go before it gets worse, she said. Her voice caught somewhere between authority and apology. I wanted to say something, anything, to ease whatever had just passed between us. But before I could, her phone buzzed on the counter. The name that lit up the screen made her freeze. Ex-husband. I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer, just silenced the call, face blank again. Her voice came out soft. You shouldn't ask questions you don't want the answers to. The rain got heavier, beating against the windows. I could see her reflection in the glass, distant, unreadable, and I realized she wasn't trying to push me away. She was holding herself back. I wanted to tell her that I understood, that it wasn't pity or curiosity. It was something quieter, something that scared me too. But I didn't say it. Instead, I stood up, reached for my jacket, and said, "I'll walk you home." She didn't look at me, just whispered, "That's not a good idea." The thunder rolled again. We both stayed where we were. Neither of us moved toward the door. It happened 3 days later. No rain this time. Just heat, heavy and unmoving. The kind of evening that made the air inside the bookstore feel too still. The fans hummed overhead, stirring nothing. She was at the counter again, reading, though I could tell she hadn't turned the page in at least 15 minutes. I'd come by to drop off a box of donated books, but neither of us mentioned that. She glanced up when I entered. "You keep finding reasons to show up," she said quietly. "Maybe," I answered. "Or maybe the reasons keep finding me." She gave a small, humorless smile, then looked away. "You should stop before it starts meaning something." That hit harder than she intended, I think. The words hung between us, slow and heavy. "Too late," I said, before I could stop myself. Her hands froze over the book. I saw her throat move as she swallowed. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't." I took a step closer, not enough to cross a line, but enough that I could see the faint tremor in her jaw. "You're the one who asked what I was running from," I said. "Maybe it's this, whatever this is." Her eyes lifted then. Tired, searching, a little afraid. "And what exactly is this?" I didn't have an answer. The silence said everything instead. She sighed and stood, walking toward the back shelves as if putting distance between us could make the words disappear. But she didn't tell me to leave. So I followed, keeping just far enough behind to hear her voice when she spoke again. "You're young," she said, not accusing, just stating it like a fact she wished weren't true. "You have all the time in the world to get tangled up in the wrong people. Don't make me one of them." "I don't think that's how it works," I said. She stopped between two shelves, one hand resting on the spines of the books, the other hanging at her side. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the fan, spinning air that didn't cool anything. Then she said, softly, "You make it hard to stay lonely." The words barely carried, but they were enough. I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief, not triumph, just a kind of ache that had been waiting for permission to exist. I wanted to touch her hand, to tell her it wasn't about loneliness, not really. But the way she stood, back straight, head slightly bowed, made it clear that if I did, something would break. So I said nothing. She turned, finally facing me. Her expression was calm, but her eyes weren't. "We can't keep doing this," she said. "I know," I whispered, but neither of us moved. The seconds stretched until it felt like the world outside had stopped breathing. She exhaled, a sound so fragile it almost wasn't a sound at all. "This isn't a story we get to finish," she said. And for the first time, I believed her. She didn't come to the shop for 2 days after that night. When I asked the owner if she was okay, he said she'd taken some time off, voice casual in that way people get when they're trying not to speculate. The store felt wrong without her, quieter, but not in the peaceful way. More like an unfinished sentence. On the 3rd day, she came back. No announcement. No explanation. Just the sound of the key turning in the door before opening hours. I was already there, shelving paperbacks. She stopped when she saw me. "You shouldn't be here this early." "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Didn't think you'd be here either." She walked past me without answering, setting her bag on the counter. For a while, she moved around like she was trying to rebuild the rhythm we'd broken, unlocking drawers, restacking books that didn't need it, avoiding my eyes. Then she sighed, almost to herself. "You remind me of someone." I looked up. "Someone you knew?" Her lips pressed together, and she gave a small nod. "Someone I lost." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. But I noticed her hands trembling slightly as she pulled an envelope from her bag. It was old, edges soft, a faint coffee stain on one corner. "I found this last night," she said, setting it on the counter between us. It was inside a book that came in from a donation box. His handwriting. I stared at the letter, unsure if she wanted me to see it. "I don't believe in coincidences," she said. "But I don't know what this is supposed to mean either." After a long pause, she slid it toward me. "You can read it." I hesitated, but unfolded it carefully. The ink was faded, the words brief. "I still come by the shop sometimes. I stand outside, but I don't go in." I don't know if it's cowardice or mercy, maybe both. But if you ever read this, know that I loved you, even when I couldn't say it right. No name, no date, but her silence filled in the rest. I handed it back, my throat dry. Was that your husband? I asked softly. She shook her head. No, someone before him, before all of this. She gestured around the shop, her voice breaking just a little. He used to say the same things you do, the same way you do. It's unnerving. I didn't know what to say. The air between us felt heavier now, not romantic, not tense, just painfully real. I thought I'd forgotten him, she said. But then you started showing up, asking questions, staying late. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I missed him or if I just missed being looked at the way you do. She let out a shaky breath, eyes glistening. You see the worst in me and don't flinch. That's what scares me. I stepped closer, not touching her, just standing close enough that I could see the reflection of the letter's ink in her eyes. What scares you? I asked. Her gaze flicked toward me, searching, almost desperate. That I might start believing you're here for the same reasons he wasn't, she whispered. And before I could respond, before I could tell her I didn't even know what that meant, she turned away, gently folded the letter, and said, almost to herself, some ghosts don't leave. They just change their faces. The next week passed like something suspended between endings and beginnings. We didn't talk much about the letter or about that night, but something had shifted quietly and irreversibly. She didn't try to keep me away anymore. She didn't invite me closer either. It was as if we'd both silently agreed that what existed between us didn't need a name. It just needed to be allowed to exist, even if only for a while. It was late on a Friday when the moment finally came, though moment feels too sudden a word for what it really was. We were closing up, the soft lamplight brushing against the dust in the air. She was sitting on the floor between two shelves, sorting through another box of donations. I joined her without asking. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The clock ticked, distant and unbothered. I thought about leaving, she said eventually, eyes still on the books. After that letter showed up. Why didn't you? She hesitated. Because you'd still come here. I didn't move. Would that be a bad thing? I don't know, she said. It's complicated. The word hung there, worn but honest. I keep telling myself this is wrong, she continued quietly. That I'm too old to be seen like this again. That I'm projecting or pretending. And then you say something small. Or just look at me like you do. And all that logic starts to sound like noise. She laughed softly, bitterly, rubbing her temples. You make it very hard to stay reasonable. I wanted to tell her that I didn't want reason. That I only wanted what was real. This slow, fractured tenderness that neither of us had asked for. But the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted either. So instead, I said the only thing that felt honest. I don't know what this is, I said. But I know it feels like the first thing in a long time that's not pretending. She finally looked at me. The kind of look that reaches you, even if you're trying not to be reached. I think I've been waiting, she said softly. Not for you. Just for someone to make me remember I'm still here. Her voice trembled on that last word. I didn't answer. I just reached out, not boldly, but carefully. And she didn't move away. My fingers brushed hers, and she let them stay. Her hand was warm, trembling slightly, her thumb tracing the edge of my palm like a memory being rewritten. No one said anything for a long time. The shop lights dimmed with the timer. The city outside had gone quiet. She leaned back against the shelf, eyes closed. If we don't name it, she whispered, maybe it doesn't have to end. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. We sat there, hands barely touching, the hum of the ceiling fan the only witness. Nothing about it was perfect or even certain. It just was fragile, steady, alive. And for the first time, that felt like enough. It's been almost a year since that night in the bookstore. The shelves are still there, the same leaning towers of forgotten stories, but everything feels quieter now. Or maybe it's just me. Maybe silence doesn't sound like emptiness anymore. She still runs the shop, still wears her hair in that half-undone knot, still hums under her breath when she thinks no one's listening. Sometimes I drop by after work. We talk about nothing, books, the weather, a stray cat that's decided the doorstep belongs to him. We never talked about that night. Not once. but it doesn't hang between us anymore. It just rests there, folded into the rhythm of everything else. People think closure comes with big speeches, the kind where someone finally says what they should have said sooner. But ours came quietly, the way real things usually do, in smaller moments. Her asking me to fix a shelf, me leaving coffee by her register, a shared look when a certain song plays on the radio. That was the lesson, I think. Love, or whatever grows in its shadow, isn't always a declaration. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to stay human around someone who saw you at your worst and didn't step back. She changed me, though I don't think she meant to. Before her, I mistook longing for love and silence for indifference. Now I understand they can be the same language, just spoken differently. As for her, she laughs more now. Not loudly, not carelessly, but without apology. I catch her smiling sometimes for no reason at all, and that feels like victory enough. Once, when we were closing up, she said, "You know, we could have ruined this." "I know," I told her. "Funny, isn't it?" she said. "How we didn't." That's all it was. No confession, no promise. Just an acknowledgement of what almost happened and what did. I don't think we were meant to last, at least not in the way people expect. We were a season, the kind that changes you without asking permission. I still visit, but not every day. I think she needs her quiet again, and maybe I need mine too. Yet every time I walk past that door and hear the little bell ring, a part of me still feels 22. Carrying her groceries, trying to find an answer to a question I didn't know how to face. Now I think I finally have one. Some people don't enter your life to stay. They come to remind you how to see. And sometimes, that's love too. Sparkles, if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?